Yesterday, we talked about changes coming in announced to Warzone 2 and DMZ for Season 2 in a little under a month at this point. Of those three announcements that Infinity Ward and Raven made so far, notably absent was any information on Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer aspect of the game and what to expect change-wise in Season 2. Today, however, we ended up getting our first glance at what we can expect for Season 2 with the Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer experience. While what's specifically stated is a bit smaller on the information side, it opens the door for the reveal of more changes upcoming in the next few days. So today, we're going to be taking a look and examining this announcement for Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer in Season 2 and what you need to know beyond that. As we go along, drop your thoughts below. Do you like the announcement? Are you hopeful for more to come over the next coming days? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts below. And before we get into it, a reminder, code Espresso gets you 20 to 30% off your entire order at gfuel.com, linked below. The Morbius Nectarine flavor, Hype Sauce, and Strawberry Banana are my top three, so check those out if interested. But for now, let's get into it. So Modern Warfare 2 this year introduced Tier 1. It was something that was announced from the very get-go. They mentioned Tier 1 in our pre-reveal presentation that media and creators were a part of before the game was ever even revealed in June. Now, at the time, I don't remember if it was just an assumption that it'd be an additional mode or a fundamental one here, but we knew that it'd be coming. Fast forward a bit, Tier 1 wasn't at launch, which sucked absolutely, but then it finally came with Season 1. And at that point, though, people realized, oh, Tier 1 isn't exactly what we may have thought with the assumption there. By all indications and messaging, it seemed like it'd be the rebranding of Hardcore. Something to call Hardcore that isn't Hardcore. Don't ask me why that would have made sense, but like, with COD changing so much for the sake of change, it kind of checks out. But there are big differences in Tier 1 versus Hardcore. Tier 1's biggest difference, perhaps, is your health regenerates, whereas Hardcore does not unless you utilize a stim shot tactical. You also had a bit more health fundamentally in regards to Tier 1 versus Hardcore. I think it's 45 or 50 HP with one-shot headshot potential, while Hardcore is always 30 HP with no regen. Tier 1 had 0 HUD elements, including pop-ups, so if you're going for camos, admittedly, it made it pretty annoying to some degree, where you wouldn't be able to see how many long shots you were going for, how many headshots or something like that, in case you weren't necessarily keeping track with every single one that happened. Additionally, for other HUD elements, there also were no things like hit markers even. So the easiest way to sort of compare Tier 1 wasn't necessarily Hardcore like many people thought it would be, but instead like realism in Modern Warfare 2019, a mode which, alongside NVG modes, were heavily marketed and pushed pre-launch, but then at launch, not even kidding, 2 weeks after the game of Modern Warfare 2019 launched, they were almost entirely pulled from the standard stable rotations. We'd only see them as LTMs return later in the year. So naturally, there was a lot of disconnect between interest in the community and what they wanted versus what we actually got with Tier 1. But that's where we now turn today. In line with the trend of daily intel on Season 2 here the last 4 days now, we learned from Infinity Ward that, quote, no HUD, no problem. Hardcore is back. Follow Season 2's multiplayer updates in our studio blog later this week. So there we have it. A faithful Hardcore will be finally coming back to Modern Warfare 2 with Season 2. That, while we can all argue whether some of the changes for looting, the Gulag and such with Warzone 2 and DMZ is good or bad, those things are rather subjective based on your opinion of Warzone 2, but I think this, seeing a Hardcore introduced, is absolutely a safer bet of, yeah, that's a good addition, and I think we can all agree that this is a good change coming to Season 2. Now, right now, beyond that, there's no details on if Tier 1 will be gone, if it will coexist between core, realism, and Tier 1 and Hardcore. I mean, like we just said a few moments ago, this really mirrors that comparison that we saw with realism and NVG modes in Modern Warfare 2. The only difference is in both those situations, though, NVG and realism modes were air quote corrected in 2 to 3 weeks time after launch, not nearly 4 months after launch, and realism and NVG modes were not a replacement to Hardcore modes if my memory serves me correctly. They were simply additional, which brings me to my next point. I'm all for saying, yo, this is a great job adding this in here with Season 2, looking forward to it and everything, but I mean, should we have to? I'm absolutely happy for the Hardcore community that we see this sort of W today, that we'll get a faithful Hardcore in Season 2, but I mean, why was Tier 1 introduced as a replacement to begin with? It's just, again, one of those things, changing things for the sake of change, that wasn't necessary in my opinion. But that's where we're at in regards to Hardcore. So while it's not a whole ton initially as of today in regards to the announced multiplayer changes, this to me opens the door for much more potential for what we'll be seeing in the coming days ahead, and with that deep dive blog post that Infinity Ward has promised. At this point, I'm expecting to see more in regards to changes announced for multiplayer, so while the wording initially was previously all-encompassing for Warzone 2 and DMZ, I was admittedly a little worried about the fate of multiplayer and seeing, or not seeing changes rather, but this gives me a bit of hope that we can see some more stuff stuff changed here and detailed in the coming days. Now, realistically, in terms of other changes that I'd expect to see, honestly, I think it'd be cool to see some ADS speeds and ADS penalties being decreased. And I can do as well as I want to, but this game is objectively slower than any recent COD games. It's not even a matter of me wanting a twitchy spam ADS game like, I don't know, Black Ops 2. You guys remember the MSMC with fast hands? That thing had like a 2-frame ADS speed. So I'm not even wanting that. I just want something that can give some quicker gameplay and pacing to the overall gunfights. But what I don't see them doing are other major fundamentals that are like structural game things. So as much as I'd love to see it, I don't see them changing or even addressing the skill-based matchmaking or shadow ban garbage. I don't see them adding or reverting movement back to what we had in Modern Warfare 2019. I don't see them changing the perk system, and I honestly don't really expect them to change much of the UI either. I don't know when we talk about these multiplayer changes that could potentially come to Season 2, I don't know if I want to brand it as a realistic approach or if it's more pessimistic at this point, because honestly, I hate to say it, I'm usually the glass half full guy, but I just don't see them entirely changing the makeup of the game like that kind of stuff. The only thing that I would want to go into optimistically, but I know that if I do this, it's not going to work out, is just more maps for multiplayer. I'll reserve my judgment for anything else whenever it's finally announced, but my real only hopes for multiplayer on my personal end that I think is plausible is, again, just more maps and original ones at that. It's one thing to have a shortened list of MP maps at launch, it's another to drop a new season of content with less maps than ever, tied with the least amount we've seen post-launch, and for both of those maps to be remakes. Then, with the rumor of Castle as a remake, which admittedly is still really weird to me, that a Treyarch IP item would make its way into an Infinity Ward title, and yes, I know that we have seen Sledgehammer do this, but that's been Sledgehammer. They've pulled from both Treyarch and Infinity Ward as a crossover. We've just never seen that direct Treyarch to Infinity Ward crossover. But honestly, with that being rumored at this point, there's a part of me that's also like, watch, they're going to reintroduce or finally figure out the legal issues with Museum and introduce that as a new map for multiplayer. So, end of the day, to me, 2 maps a season just should not happen. It shouldn't. Period. In the air quote biggest game of the decade for the franchise, a new 2.0 era of Call of Duty, offering less and less is not the way to stand by those claims. 3 minimum is what we need, and that still to me would be disappointingly low. Get back to that basic minimum of 4, and that should be the standard, if not 5 to 6. And we've seen that done before. Within the last few years, the last Modern Warfare title had that many maps per season. So like, I don't understand why we can't do that again here. But beyond that, I mean, that's just where I'm at here with this. Hopefully we see some more information in regards to multiplayer changes either tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, leading up to whenever they drop the blog post. And at that point, in regards to the blog post, I'm still expecting the segment on multiplayer to be smaller, but I'm hoping that there are worthwhile changes in regards to that. It seems like Warzone 2 and DMZ will have some big fundamental changes, so obviously they're going to expand upon that a lot more, but in regards to multiplayer, I hope it's worth the time. I hope that come Season 2 here, we do have enough that actually builds out what we have for that multiplayer audience. I've seen it in the comments. I myself really am not too enthralled with Warzone 2 right now. DMZ is kind of keeping me afloat just because it's something to do. It's challenges to complete. Once I complete all those, who knows how I'll feel about it. But in regards to the multiplayer aspect, I'm with you, man. We absolutely need to see more. So fingers crossed we get more out of this deep dive blog post detailing more changes for multiplayer and then what we eventually see with Modern Warfare 2. But for now, I think that's what we're going to call it. Just wanted to fill you guys in relation to what you should know here for Modern Warfare 2, multiplayer in particular, coming into Season 2 and the upcoming week ahead. So let me know your thoughts down below, like what you heard so far, this announcement of Hardcore coming back. Whatever the case, drop your thoughts below. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, and anything COD related. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.